I never meant to go through my mother's phone. Just happened. It was a Saturday afternoon and my phone was dead again. My charger had mysteriously disappeared, thanks to my sister no doubt, and I needed to call my friend. My mother's phone was sitting on the kitchen counter, screen unlocked, as she hummed to herself while making tea. "Hey Mom, can I use your phone real quick?" I asked, already reaching for it. "Yeah, sure," she said without looking up. I grabbed it and stepped into the living room, dialing my friend's number. But as I waited for the call to connect, my finger slipped, and I accidentally swiped down on the home screen. That's when I saw it. A folder labeled, Hidden. It was tucked away among her other apps, almost invisible. Something about it caught my attention. My mom wasn't the secretive type. She barely knew how to use half the apps on her phone. Why would she have a hidden folder? Curiosity got the best of me. Tapped it. Inside were hundreds of pictures and videos. The first few were normal. Random receipts, pictures of our cat, an old grocery list. But as I scrolled further, my stomach tightened. These were family vacation photos. So, I didn't remember taking them. I frowned, clicking on the first image. It was a photo of my parents, my little sister, and me standing in front of a massive wooden cabin. Snow-covered pine trees surrounded us. My dad's arm was around my shoulder, my sister was grinning up at the camera, and my mom held up a steaming cup of cocoa. The timestamp on the photo was from 3 years ago, but I had no memory of ever being there. I scrolled through more pictures. There was one of me and my sister building a snowman, one of us hiking through the woods, another of me roasting marshmallows over a fire pit. I even found a video. My dad filming as my sister and I laughed, throwing snow at each other. None of this made sense. I had never been to this place. My heart pounded as I kept scrolling. There were more pictures. Sunsets over a frozen lake, my mom cooking in a small rustic kitchen, my dad chopping wood. It all looked so real. But how could it be? Then I found a video that made my blood turn cold. It was taken from my mom's perspective. The camera shook slightly as she recorded us walking through a snowy path in the woods. My dad was ahead, carrying my sister on his shoulders. I was right next to my mom, smiling, laughing. And then, in the middle of the video, I turned to the camera. I looked straight into it. And I whispered, "Help me." I dropped the phone. My breath came in short, panicked gasps. My hands were shaking as I stared at the screen, where the video was still playing. In the next frame, I was laughing again like nothing had happened. "What the hell?" I whispered. "Maz." My mother's voice made me jump. She stood in the doorway, wiping her hands on a towel, her face unreadable. I scrambled to grab the phone, but it was too late. She had seen. Her eyes darted to the screen, then back to me. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she sighed and took a step forward. "You weren't supposed to see that." My pulse pounded in my ears. "Mom, what is this? I don't remember any of this." She took the phone from my hands and locked the screen. "It's complicated," she said quietly. I swallowed hard. "What do you mean, complicated?" "Either we went on this trip or we didn't. And I don't remember any of it." She hesitated. "We'll talk about it later." "No, Mom. Tell me now," I demanded. She looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time I saw something in her eyes that scared me. Fear. A heavy silence filled the room. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, "That trip never really happened." My stomach dropped. "What?" "Breathe." She took a shaky breath. "Not the way you think." A chill ran down my spine. My mind raced, trying to make sense of her words. If it never happened, then why were there pictures? Videos? Why was I in them? Something was very, very wrong. And I was about to find out just how deep the lie went. My mother's words echoed in my head. That trip never really happened. I stared at her, my heart pounding. "What do you mean? How can a trip not happen if there are pictures? Videos? I was there, wasn't I?" She sighed, rubbing her temples. "Maz, I can't explain everything right now." "Yes, you can," I snapped. "You just don't want to." A flicker of something, Guilt maybe crossed her face. He turned away. Go charge your phone. We'll talk later. But I wasn't going to wait. The second she left the room, I grabbed her phone again. My hands were shaking as I unlocked it. The hidden folder was gone. Vanished. I frantically searched through her apps, her photos, even her recently deleted files. Nothing. It was as if the folder had never existed. She had erased it. A sick feeling twisted in my gut. Whatever was in those pictures, she didn't want me to find it again. But I wasn't letting this go. That night, I lay awake in bed, replaying everything in my head. I had scrolled through hundreds of photos. There was an entire vacation, an entire experience that I had no memory of. But the proof had been right there. And the video, I couldn't get it out of my mind. The way my past self had looked at the camera. The way I had whispered, "Help me." Was it a joke? A prank I had pulled on my mom years ago? If so, why didn't I remember it? And why was she so scared when I found the folder? I needed answers. The next morning I decided to test something. At breakfast, I casually asked my little sister Aisha, "Hey, do you remember that trip we took? The one with the snow and the cabin?" She was mid-bite into her cereal when she froze. My stomach tightened. Then she slowly shook her head. "We never went on a trip like that." I felt my blood run cold. "What?" "But I saw pictures." Before I could finish, my mom's voice cut in sharply. "Enough, Moz." Turned. She was standing by the sink, gripping a dish towel so tightly her knuckles were white. "Drop it," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. I glanced back at Aisha. Her eyes darted between Mom and me, confusion written all over her face. Something was seriously wrong. If my mom wasn't going to tell me the truth, maybe my dad would. That evening, I found him in the garage, tinkering with his old motorcycle. He barely looked up as I walked in. "Hey kid. What's up?" I hesitated. "Dad, do you remember a vacation in a cabin? Like 3 years ago?" His hand froze on the wrench. I saw his jaw tighten. For a moment he didn't say anything. Then he went back to working on the bike. "Nah, I don't think so." He was lying. I could hear it in his voice. "Are you sure?" Pressed. "Because I found pictures on Mom's phone. There were videos of us there." This time he did look at me. His expression was unreadable, but there was something off in his eyes. Something like regret. "Listen, Moz," he said slowly. "Some things are better left alone." I swallowed hard. "What does that mean?" He sighed, wiping his hands on a rag. "It means let it go." My head spun. First my mom, now my dad. They were both hiding something from me. Something big. That night, when the house was quiet, I made my next move. My mom always backed up her phone on the family laptop. If she had deleted the folder, there was a chance it still existed there. I snuck into the study, powered on the laptop, and held my breath as I searched through her backups. First I found nothing. No hidden folder. No vacation pictures. Then I found an audio file. It was labeled with a date. December 17th, 3 years ago. My heart pounded as I clicked on it. A crackling sound filled the speakers. Then my parents' voices. "Mom, we have to do it." "Dad, are you sure about this? It's not natural." "Mom, what choice do we have? He won't survive otherwise." A heavy silence. Dad whispering. "If he ever finds out the truth, he won't be the same." I slammed the laptop shut, my breath ragged. What the hell did that mean? Survive what? Find out what truth? My mind raced with possibilities, each one worse than the last. I wasn't just missing memories of a vacation. I was missing something much bigger. Something about myself. And whatever it was, my parents had gone to extreme lengths to keep me from knowing. But it was too late. Because now, I wasn't stopping until I found out everything. I barely slept that night. The audio recording played on a loop in my head. "We have to do it. He won't survive otherwise. If he ever finds out the truth, he won't be the same." What were they talking about? What did they mean by not natural? And most importantly, what had they done to me? By the time morning came, I had made a decision. I wasn't letting this go. That I spent the entire day in a fog, my mind racing through every possibility. Was it a medical thing? A near-death experience I had blocked out? A surgery my parents never told me about? The more I thought about it, the more questions I had. So, I did something I should have done earlier. I dug through my old journals. I wasn't much of a diary person, but I had kept a few notebooks over the years. If something huge had happened to me 3 years ago, maybe I had written about it. I pulled out my dusty notebooks and flipped through the pages. But something was off. The entries from 3 years ago were missing. Not just missing, ripped out. I ran my fingers over the jagged edges where the pages had been torn. Someone had deliberately removed them. My hands started shaking. Who would do this? And why? Then, as I flipped to the last few pages, I found something. Note. Scrawled in messy, hurried handwriting. My own handwriting. If you're reading this, stop digging. Forget about it. Trust no one. I stared at the words, my breath shallow. Had I written this? Had I known something back then? Something so terrible that I had tried to warn myself? If I had, then I had already made a choice. I wasn't going to stop. That I needed to talk to someone. Someone who wasn't my parents. And the only person left was Aisha. She was only a few years younger than me. Maybe she didn't remember much, or maybe my parents had told her even less than they told me. But I had a feeling she knew something. I found her in her room, scrolling through her phone. "Hey," I said, leaning against the doorframe. She barely looked up. "What?" "I need to ask you something." She sighed dramatically. "If this is about the hidden vacation again, Mom already told me not to." Cut her off. "You do remember something, don't you?" She froze. For a split second, I saw panic flicker in her eyes before she masked it with annoyance. "No, I don't." "You hesitated." "No, I didn't." I narrowed my eyes. "Aisha, please, just tell me the truth." She bit her lip, looked away. I don't know, okay." I took a step closer. "You don't know what?" She clenched her fists. "I don't know what's real and what's not." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" She exhaled shakily. "It's weird, Maz. Sometimes I feel like I do remember a cabin. Vacation. But it's all fuzzy like a dream. Like I remember it wrong." I swallowed hard. "And you never thought that was weird?" "Of course I did," she snapped. "But every time I asked Mom and Dad about it, they acted like I was crazy. So I stopped asking." I sat down on the edge of her bed, my mind spinning. Aisha wasn't lying. She remembered something. But just like me, it was broken. Unclear. Like a fractured past. That night I had a dream. Except it didn't feel like a dream. Felt like a memory. I was standing in the snow. The wind howled around me, biting into my skin. My breath came in heavy, foggy puffs. I was scared. Something was behind me. I turned, saw the cabin in the distance. The lights were on inside. Warm. But I didn't go toward it. I went into the woods. I don't know why. I just knew I had to. The trees loomed tall and dark around me. The snow crunched beneath my boots. My pulse pounded in my ears. And then, a whisper. "You shouldn't be here." I spun around. There was someone in the trees. Shadow. Figure. I couldn't see their face. But I knew somehow that they were looking at me. "Go back." The whisper came again. I tried to move. Tried to run. But before I could, everything went black. I jolted awake, gasping for breath. My sheets were soaked with sweat. My heart was hammering. That wasn't just a dream. Felt too real. Like a memory breaking through. But if it was a memory, then who was the person in the woods? And why was I running from the cabin? I sat up, wiping my face. My hands were trembling. Had to go there. I had to find that cabin. I didn't care if my parents wanted me to stop. I was going to uncover the truth. No matter what it took. The dream or memory had shaken me to my core. There was something real about it. The snow, the cabin, the whisper in the woods. It wasn't just my imagination. It was a fragment of the past. A past my parents didn't want me to remember. I knew what I had to do. I had to find the cabin. The problem? I had no idea where it was. I couldn't exactly ask my parents. They were already acting like I was crazy for even bringing it up. But there had to be a way to track it down. I sat down with my laptop and started searching. First, I checked our Google Maps history. My parents weren't the type to clear their location data, so maybe I'd find something. But after scrolling through years of locations, I came up with nothing. Then I had another idea. The metadata. Every picture taken on a phone has hidden data. Coordinates, timestamps, even details about the camera used. If I could recover the photos from my mom's backup, I might be able to get the location. I dug back into her laptop, searched through the backup folders. And then I found something. One of the pictures hadn't been erased completely. A single corrupt file was still there. It wouldn't open, but I didn't need to see the picture. I just needed the data. I ran it through an EXIF metadata tool. Seconds later, the coordinates popped up. My heart pounded as I copied them into Google Maps. A location appeared. Deep in the mountains. Far from any town. No listed cabins. No tourist spots. Just forest. And suddenly I knew. This was it. The place I had seen in my dream. There was no way my parents would let me go. If I even mentioned the location, they would shut it down immediately. I had to do this alone. I packed a small bag. Warm clothes, flashlight, snacks, a portable charger. It wasn't much, but I wasn't planning on staying long. I just needed to get to the cabin. To see it for myself. Then I waited. At around 11 p.m. my parents went to bed. Aisha was already asleep. The house was silent. I grabbed my bag, slipped on my jacket and crept outside. The air was freezing but I barely noticed. My adrenaline was too high. I had already mapped out my route. There was a bus station about a mile from my house. If I caught the night bus, I could get close to the mountains by morning. From there I'd have to hike. It was risky. It was dangerous. But I had to do it. I had to know the truth. The bus ride was long and silent. I kept staring at the location on my phone, my fingers gripping my backpack. The closer I got, the more my chest tightened. What was I going to find there? Would the cabin even still be there? Would it be abandoned or worse, occupied? By the time I reached the last stop, the sky was turning gray with early morning light. I was the only passenger left. The driver gave me a weird look as I stepped off. "You sure you want to be out here, kid?" he asked. "Ain't nothing but woods and cold." Forced a nod. "Yeah, I'm meeting someone." He didn't look convinced, but he pulled away, leaving me alone in the freezing morning air. I pulled up the coordinates. The cabin was 3 miles into the woods. There was no road leading to it. No trail. I swallowed hard and took my first step toward the trees. The hike was brutal. The air was thin. The cold bit through my jacket. The deeper I went, the quieter everything became. No birds. No animals. Just the crunch of my boots in the snow. And then I saw it. Cabin. It looked exactly like it did in the pictures. Dark wooden walls, snow-covered roof. A small porch with a broken chair. My stomach twisted. This place was real. I wasn't crazy. I stepped forward, my breath fogging in the air. The door was closed but not locked. I reached for the handle, hesitated, then pushed it open. The inside was dusty, cold, abandoned. But the moment I stepped inside, a shiver ran down my spine. I had been here before. I knew this place. And then I saw something on the wall. Family photo. My family. Standing in the same spot where I stood now. Except, there was someone else in the picture. Boy. A boy who looked exactly like me. I stumbled back, my head spinning. Who was he? Why did he look like me? I turned, my breathing ragged, and that's when I noticed something else. In the corner of the cabin, there was an old wooden chest. I didn't want to open it. But my hands moved on their own, fingers gripping the edges, pulling up the heavy lid. Inside were clothes, old faded child-sized clothes. And on top of them a journal. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The cover was worn, the edges frayed. I flipped to the first page. And my heart stopped, because the first words inside were written in my own handwriting. My name is Maz. And if you're reading this, I didn't make it. A cold shiver ran down my spine as I stared at the words on the page. My name is Maz. And if you're reading this, I didn't make it. My hands trembled as I flipped through the journal, the pages filled with my own handwriting. Only I had never written this. The ink was faded, the edges worn, but every letter, every word was unmistakably mine. But how? I took a deep breath and started reading. December 14th. The snow won't stop. It's been days. Mom and Dad are acting strange. They won't let me or Aisha go outside. Dad keeps checking the windows. Something is wrong. Can feel it. December 16th. I heard them whispering last night. Something about leaving. About taking the other one with them. I don't understand. Who is the other one? December 17th. Aisha is crying. She says she saw something outside the window. Boy. Just standing in the snow watching. Mom told her it was a bad dream. But I saw him too. My breath hitched. My pulse pounded in my ears. I turned the page. December 18th. He's getting closer. Boy. He looks just like me. Exactly like me. Dad tried to tell me it was my imagination. But he's lying. I know what I saw. And I think Mom knows too. December 19th. They're taking us away. I heard them talking. Mom said we have to end it before it's too late. Dad doesn't want to. He keeps saying, it's not his fault. I don't know what they're talking about. But I'm scared. I gripped the book so tightly my knuckles turned white. What was this? Who wrote this? Was it me? Didn't make sense. It was impossible. And yet, the words felt true. I turned the page. There was only one entry left. December 20th. They're gone. I woke up and the cabin was empty. No Mom. No Dad. No Aisha. Just me. And him. He's inside now. I can hear him breathing. He's waiting. If you find this, run. The final word sent a bolt of ice through my veins. I snapped the journal shut, my hands shaking. The air in the cabin felt heavier, suffocating. That was the last entry. The rest of the pages were blank. But I wasn't alone. I felt it before I saw it. Presence. A shadow shifting in the dim light. My breath caught in my throat as I slowly turned my head toward the corner of the cabin. And there, standing in the darkness, was me. My own face. My own eyes. But his skin was pale. His lips cracked. His expression hollow. He took a step forward. I stumbled back, my legs barely holding me up. His mouth opened, lips stretching into an unnatural grin. You came back, he whispered. His voice was mine. But it was wrong. Distorted. Cold. The air around me dropped, the temperature plummeting. My breath fogged in front of me. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The boy, the other me, took another step forward. I've been waiting, he said. And then, the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the room. The air turned ice cold, wrapping around me like unseen fingers. My breath came out in shallow gasps, each one visible in the freezing air. I could hear him, breathing, low, steady, too close, and a whisper. You forgot about me. My heart pounded in my chest. I turned, my hands fumbling for anything. My phone, a flashlight, something to cut through the suffocating darkness. Then footsteps. Deliberate. Coming closer. Panic surged through me. I turned and bolted toward the door, slamming into it so hard my shoulder ached. My hands scrambled for the handle, but the wood was ice cold. So cold it burned my skin. Chuckle. Low. Mused. You can't leave. Something brushed against my arm. I jerked away, my body trembling. My fingers finally found the handle, and I twisted it desperately. The door wouldn't budge. The laughter stopped. Then the whisper again right by my ear. Because you already did. The lights flickered back on. And he was right in front of me. My own face. My own eyes. But his expression was twisted. Me. And his skin. His skin was pale, almost translucent. His lips were dry, cracked like he hadn't spoken in years. A voice not quite mine slithered from his throat. You left me here. I stumbled back, my entire body numb with fear. This isn't real, I whispered, shaking my head. You're not real. His head tilted. Then why are you afraid? I clenched my fists, trying to steady my breathing. Think, Muzz. Think. You're just a dream, I said, forcing the words out. A memory. A hallucination. His lips curled into a slow, eerie smile. A memory. His voice was mocking. Then why do you remember me? My stomach twisted. I didn't. Not really. But deep inside something felt familiar. Like I had been here before. Like I had seen him before. My gaze flicked toward the journal still clutched in my shaking hands. The last entry. If you find this, run. I turned back to him, my voice barely a whisper. What are you? His grin widened. I am you. My pulse thundered in my ears. No, I whispered. You're not me. His expression darkened, the smile fading. I was supposed to be. The words hit me like a slap. I shook my head. That doesn't make sense. His gaze bored into mine, unblinking. They took you instead, he murmured. Left me behind. My hands clenched. Who? You already know. A flash of memory jolted through me. Mom's fearful eyes. Dad's frantic whispers. Storm. A decision. A mistake. A sick feeling twisted in my gut. This wasn't just some nightmare. This was real. And whatever had happened here, I was never supposed to remember. The boy, the other me, stood in front of me, his pale skin almost glowing under the dim cabin light. His gaze never wavered, locked onto mine like he was looking straight into my soul. They left me here, he whispered. And they took you. My stomach twisted. I wanted to say he was lying, that none of this was real. But deep inside me, a buried part of my mind recognized the truth. Something had happened here. Something my parents had erased. I tightened my grip on the journal. My own handwriting, dated years ago, stared back at me. You said they left, I said, swallowing hard. Why? The boy's expression darkened. Because there were two of us, he murmured. And they only needed one. My breath caught in my throat. Two of us. Two identical boys. A horrifying thought crept into my mind. Twins. I had never been told I had a twin. There were no baby pictures of me with another sibling. No stories, no memories. But that didn't mean it wasn't true. I stared at him, my pulse racing. You're saying we were twins, and they abandoned you? He tilted his head slightly. Not quite. I swallowed. Then what? His lips parted, and for the first time, there was something almost fragile in his expression. They tried to get rid of me. The words sent a chill through my entire body. No, I whispered. My parents. They didn't have a choice, he interrupted, his voice eerily calm. Something was wrong with one of us. And they had to choose. My hands trembled. What do you mean, something was wrong? His face remained unreadable. I don't remember. Maybe I was sick. Maybe I was dangerous. His eyes flickered with something unreadable. Maybe I was never supposed to exist. Felt sick. This was impossible. It had to be impossible. But every part of me screamed that it was real. That this wasn't just some ghost story or nightmare. That I had lived this. That I had forgotten this. I took a shaky step backward. What do you want from me? He let out a soft breath. I want to know why you got to live. A heavy silence filled the cabin. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Knock. On the cabin door. My heart nearly stopped. Both of us turned toward the sound. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Voice. Maz. My blood ran cold. It was Aisha. Aisha's voice echoed through the cabin door. Maz, are you in there? I turned to the other me, the boy who wasn't supposed to exist. His face remained blank, but I saw something flicker in his eyes. Something knowing. She found you, he murmured. I took a shaky breath. My thoughts were a whirlwind of fear, confusion, and something dangerously close to realization. Isha was here. How? I had snuck out alone. I never told anyone where I was going. Yet here she was calling my name. Something wasn't right. I turned toward the door, hesitating for only a second before I reached for the handle. The boy's voice stopped me. You shouldn't open it. Froze. She's my sister, I whispered. She was my sister too. Chill spread through me. Another knock. More urgent this time. Maz, open the door. I shook my head, trying to clear the growing fog in my mind. I don't have time for this, I muttered, reaching for the lock. She's not here for you, the boy said softly. My hand hovered over the door. What? His pale face remained emotionless. She's here for me. That made no sense. Aisha didn't even know he existed. She didn't remember this cabin. None of us were supposed to. I glanced back at the door, my breath coming in short gasps. What was I supposed to do? If I opened it, what would I find? I turned back to the boy. My lost twin, my reflection from a forgotten past. And for the first time I saw it. Fear. He was afraid. Aisha. Or of what was waiting outside. The knocking stopped. A heavy silence filled the cabin. Then Aisha's voice again. But softer. Colder. Maz, let me in. Something wasn't right. Everything in my body screamed not to open that door. But if Aisha was really out there and she needed my help, I had to make a choice. I took a deep breath. And I turned the handle. The door creaked open. Cold air rushed in, biting at my skin. Aisha stood on the porch, her dark eyes locked onto mine. But something was wrong. She looked different. Her face was too still. Her lips curled in a small, unreadable smile. Behind her, the trees stood deathly still, as if the entire forest was holding its breath. Aisha. My voice came out unsteady. Her head tilted slightly. You took a long time to open the door. Something about the way she said it made my stomach twist. I took a cautious step back. How did you find me? Her smile didn't change. You were never lost. The boy behind me inhaled sharply. I turned to him, expecting him to look angry. But instead he looked terrified. That's not Aisha, he whispered. The words slammed into me like ice water. I turned back to my sister, my pulse racing. She hadn't moved. She just stood there watching. Then she stepped inside. I took another step back, instinct screaming at me to run. The boy's voice was urgent. Maz, listen to me. If you let her in, we're both dead. Aisha's expression didn't change. But her eyes. For the first time I noticed something was missing. They were completely black. No whites, no pupils. Just an endless void. My breath caught in my throat. What are you? I whispered. Aisha's lips parted into a slow, eerie smile. I should be asking you that. The door behind her slammed shut. The lights flickered. And the cabin was swallowed by darkness. The lights died, plunging the cabin into total darkness. I could hear my own breathing, ragged, uneven. And then hers. Low. Controlled. Right in front of me. Aisha. I whispered. No answer. Blick. The dim emergency bulb in the corner flickered back to life, casting weak light into the room. She was still there, standing in the same spot. But something had changed. Her face was wrong. Her features, too sharp, too hollow. Her eyes, blacker than before, swallowed the light. And her smile. It wasn't Aisha's. It wasn't human. The boy behind me took a shaky step forward. She's not real, he murmured. She's just a shadow. I turned to him, my throat dry. A shadow of what? His face remained pale. His expression unreadable. A shadow of what was taken. My blood turned ice cold. What was taken? Aisha, or whatever was standing in front of me, tilted her head, her empty eyes locked onto mine. You don't remember, do you? A lump formed in my throat. Remember what? Her lips parted in a slow, deliberate motion. The deal. The word sent a jolt of fear through me. A deal. I shook my head. I don't understand. The boy behind me whispered. Yes, you do. And suddenly I did. Like floodgates bursting open, memories crashed into me. Flashes of the past. Storm. Two identical boys. A mother and father with a choice to make. A deal whispered in the dark. One will stay. One will leave. I staggered back, my mind reeling. They had made a deal. My parents. One of us had to go. And somehow I was the one they chose to keep. Aisha's empty eyes bore into me. Her voice was barely above a whisper. You don't belong here, Maz. My heart pounded. That's not true. The boy, my twin, spoke behind me. It is. My chest tightened. But why? Why me? Neither of them answered. Because deep down I already knew. I was never supposed to survive. The choice had been made long ago. Now, the past wanted to correct itself. The cabin walls felt like they were closing in. The dim light flickered, casting long shadows that stretched unnaturally across the floor. Aisha, or the thing wearing her face, took a slow step forward. You were never supposed to stay, she whispered. The deal was made. But it was broken. My chest tightened. My mind raced through the fractured memories flooding back. The storm. The whispers. The decision. I turned to the boy, my twin. You were the one meant to live, weren't you? Choked out. His pale face remained unreadable, but something flickered in his hollow eyes. I don't know, he murmured. Maybe neither of us was. My breath hitched. Neither of us. What did that mean? Aisha's dark, empty eyes didn't blink. You don't belong here, Maz, she repeated. It's time to fix that. The lights flickered again. Temperature dropped. I took a shaky step back, but my body felt heavy, like something was pulling me down, dragging me toward the truth I didn't want to face. The deal was broken, the boy whispered. That's why everything feels wrong. That's why I'm still here. I shook my head, refusing to believe it. But I didn't do anything. You didn't have to, Aisha said. They made the choice for you. My pulse pounded. I remembered the journal. The final entry. If you find this, run. I gritted my teeth. No. Aisha's smile didn't waver. You can't run from this. The room shuddered. The walls groaned as if something ancient was waking up beneath them. The boy, my twin, looked at me with something close to pity. You were never supposed to survive, Maz, he said softly. But you did. A cold wave of realization crashed over me. I had survived. But at what cost? The air grew thick with something unseen, pressing against my chest, making it hard to breathe. The cabin was shifting, changing. The past was closing in. And I had only moments to decide. Do I run? Or do I face the truth waiting in the dark? The walls trembled. The floor groaned beneath my feet, as if something beneath it was waking up. I could feel it now, the weight of the past pressing in from all sides. Aisha took another slow step forward. You can't fight this, Maz, she murmured. It was always meant to happen this way. My fists clenched. No, I whispered. I don't accept that. Aisha's smile widened. You don't have a choice. The boy, my twin, stood frozen behind me, his expression unreadable. You knew, didn't you? I turned to him. All this time you knew the truth. His lips parted, but no words came out. Then, finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, I wanted to forget. I swallowed hard. Forget what? His hollow eyes locked onto mine. The real reason I was left behind. The air grew colder. The room darker. Aisha tilted her head. Tell him, she whispered. Tell him the truth. My twin's fingers trembled at his sides. He looked down as if ashamed. Then he exhaled shakily. It wasn't just a choice, he murmured. It was a punishment. A chill ran down my spine. What do you mean? He hesitated. They didn't just pick you to stay. His voice was barely audible. They chose me to be taken. The words hit me like a knife. They sacrificed me, Maz. The room shuddered violently. The shadows twisted and stretched across the walls, whispering. Aisha took another step forward. And now it's time to make things right. A pit formed in my stomach. I remembered the storm. Voices. My parents' desperate whispers in the dark. One will stay. One will leave. I was never supposed to survive. I had lived because he was taken in my place. And now, the past wanted its due. Aisha's eyes darkened further, her voice like ice. You stole his life, Maz. The shadows surged forward, wrapping around me like vines. My body tensed, frozen in place. Aisha stepped closer, until she was inches from my face. And in a voice not entirely her own, she whispered, "Now give it back." The shadows tightened around me, cold and suffocating. I tried to move, but it was like my body was sinking into something unseen, something ancient that had been waiting for me all along. Aisha, or whatever wore her face, stood motionless, watching with her black, empty eyes. You stole his life, she whispered again. Now give it back. I struggled, gasping for air. I didn't steal anything. A slow, eerie smile stretched across her lips. Didn't you? My twin, the boy who had been left behind, stood silently behind me. He didn't try to stop what was happening. But he didn't help either. I turned to him, desperate. You don't want this, I rasped. You're my brother. His pale face remained unreadable. I don't even know what I am anymore, he murmured. The words sent a chill through me. You belong to the past, Maz, Aisha whispered. And the past always collects its debts. I could feel something pulling at me. Not just my body, my very existence. Like I was being peeled away from reality. Memories flickered in my mind. The childhood I had. The family that had raised me. The life that should have been his. Had I been living on borrowed time? Well, I refused to accept that. I refused to be erased. With every ounce of strength I had left, I forced out a single word. No. The shadows shuddered. Aisha's smile faltered. I felt it. A crack in whatever force was trying to take me. You think you can fight this, she hissed. You think you can change what was already decided. I clenched my fists, my body trembling. I was chosen to stay, I said through gritted teeth. And I'm not giving that up now. The cabin shook violently. The shadows around me writhed, twisting and unraveling. Aisha's black eyes flashed with something new, anger. You don't get to decide, she snarled. But behind me my twin finally moved. And when he spoke, his voice was softer. Maybe he does. Aisha's head snapped toward him, her expression darkening. You don't understand. Maybe I do. The air shifted. The pressure around me weakened. I gasped as the grip of the shadows loosened. My twin took a slow step forward. His gaze locked onto mine. For years I thought I wanted this, he said quietly. To take back what was mine. A deep sadness flickered in his expression. But now I realize. I don't want to take your life. He hesitated. I just want to be free. Aisha hissed. You were promised, she snarled. The deal was never mine to keep, he interrupted. The cabin shuddered. The shadows screamed. And then they began to unravel. Aisha's form glitched, her face distorting. You can't break the deal, she rasped. The past doesn't forget. No, my twin said. But we can move on. He turned to me, and for the first time I saw something in his hollow eyes, peace. And then he stepped into the darkness himself. The shadows wrapped around him instead of me. Aisha let out a shriek of rage. The cabin exploded with light. And then, everything went silent. When I opened my eyes, the cabin was empty. No shadows, no whispers, no Aisha, and no twin. I was alone. The past had taken what it came for. But somehow I was still here. Silence. For the first time since I had stepped into this cabin, the air felt still. The walls no longer groaned, the shadows had vanished, and the strange pressure that had been pressing down on my chest was gone. But so was he. My twin. The boy who should have lived. The past had taken him instead of me. I staggered back, my body trembling as I looked around. The cabin looked normal now. Dusty wooden walls, a single dim bulb overhead, and the floorboards creaking softly under my weight. It was just a cabin, but it didn't feel like one. Felt like a grave. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. My head still spun with everything that had just happened. Had it really happened? I turned toward the door. For a moment I was scared to open it. Would I step outside and find myself in some other place? Some other time? Would the past drag me back in? I reached for the handle. My fingers were ice cold. Deep breath. And then I pulled it open. A gust of warm air hit my face. The smell of damp earth and pine trees filled my lungs. The forest was still there. The trees stood tall, rustling gently in the breeze. Sunlight streamed through the leaves, as if nothing had ever happened. I stepped outside, my legs weak. I expected to feel relief, feel free. Instead, all I felt was emptiness. Because now I knew the truth. I had survived because someone else was taken in my place. And I would have to live with that for the rest of my life. I took one last look at the cabin. The wooden walls, the dusty windows, the door that had led me to a past I had forgotten. Then I whispered, "I'm sorry," and I walked away. But as I did, the wind picked up, rustling the leaves, carrying a voice so faint, I almost thought I imagined it. "So am I." I didn't look back. And I never returned. The picture stared back at me. Cabin. The open door. The two glowing eyes in the darkness. My hands felt numb as I gripped my phone tighter. This wasn't possible. I had left the cabin behind. I had walked away. Hadn't I? I wanted to believe it was some kind of glitch, a leftover file from before. But deep down I knew the truth. Something or someone was still watching me. A sudden knock at my bedroom door made me jump. I turned sharply, heart pounding. "Maz." My mother's voice was muffled through the wood. "Are you okay?" I hesitated. "Yeah." My voice barely sounded like my own. "Maz. You should get some rest." I swallowed hard. "Okay." Her footsteps faded down the hall. I exhaled shakily, glancing back at my phone. The photo was still there. The eyes still watching me. And then, the screen flickered. For a second the image changed. No longer the cabin. Now it was me. Picture of me lying in bed staring at my phone. Right now. My breath caught in my throat. The realization crashed down on me like ice. Someone was here. Cold chill crawled up my spine. I didn't dare move. Then, at the very edge of my vision, the closet door creaked open. Darkness pooled inside, deep and endless. And from within it, a voice whispered, "I never left."